He used the hagstones. He ran the bow up onto the shingle just long enough to lift Marin and the child out onto the stones. Up into the trees, the woman called Seld at the mill. Go and don't look back. And then he did the cold, clear thing his 40 years had taught him how to do, and his conscience would spend the rest of its life arguing about. He shoved off, and he did not flee up the coast in the fog. He showed himself. He rode out from the landing, slow and loud and visible, a gray shape in the white with his oars splashing, the obvious quarry. And he called out once, hoarse and taunting, so there could be no mistake about where the ferryman had gone. And the young men in Pell's boat, hot with the chase and the fear of going back to the Margrave empty-handed, did exactly what hot young men do. They came after him. They put their backs into it and drove straight for the slow old fool who had not got away after all, on a heading that ran, though they could not know it, and he knew it in his bones, directly across the hagstones. He timed it the way you time the one cast that matters. He let them close, let them believe they had him, and at the last moment he leaned on the oar and slid his own light boat through the single narrow gut in the reef that he could find blind, and they could not find at all. And behind him, a heartbeat later, Pell's boat struck the hagstones at full eager speed, and the black rock a foot under the white water opened its hull like a man opening a letter. He heard it. He would hear it for the rest of his life, the long, tearing crunch, and then the shouting, the different shouting. Not the hunt shout anymore, but the high animal sound of young men going into cold water in the dark a mile from either shore. The sound the Strait had pulled out of so many over the years. The sound his own daughter had perhaps made somewhere he would never know. He did not go back for them. That was the second cold thing, and it was worse than the first, because the first had been a trick, and this was a choosing. He sat in his boat in the fog and listened to the men he had drowned call out and go quiet one by one, and he did not lift an oar to save a cent of one, because to go among them in the dark was to be pulled under with them, and because every one he might have pulled out was a man who would still, dripping and alive, climb the far shingle after Marin and the child. So he let them drown. He chose a mother and a baby he did not know over 4 young men he did not know, and the arithmetic of it was clean, and the feel of it was not, and both of those things were true at once and stayed true. He lived. That was the hard part, the part that the other choice, the gate across the landing, would have spared him. He rode home through the thinning fog as the dawn came gray over the strait, and he tied up at his own jetty, and he was an old ferryman with an empty boat and a clean license, and a mother and child climbing safe into the hills on the far shore, and no one ever knew what had happened on the water that night, and he went on living his quiet life for the years that were left to him. Except that the strait was not done with him, because the strait is never done with anyone, and it had a new thing now to give him back in the white heart of every crossing. Eris still came, but the 4 young men came too, after that, surfacing out of the vapor with their wet, frightened faces, not accusing exactly. They never spoke. Just there, just kept. The way the strait keeps everything a man fails to save, and now, for Bevan, everything a man chooses not to. He had traded 1 ghost for 5. He had saved 2 lives with 4 deaths, and the cost did not nut out to nothing, because lives are not coins and do not cancel. And he carried all of it, the saved and the drowned together, across every foggy mile for the rest of his days. Was he right? He asked the fog that, sometimes rowing the deep middle with his 5 dead around him. The fog, which shows everything and answers nothing, gave him no verdict, and he came in the end to think that the absence of a verdict was the verdict, that some mercies are bought with blood, and the blood is real, and the mercy is also real, and a man does not get to feel clean about the trade, only to make it, and to carry it, and to be honest with himself about both halves of it until he died. Marin and her child were alive in the hills. 4 mothers somewhere wept for sons who never came home from a night's work on the water. Bevan had done both of those things with the same 2 hands, on the same one night, and he did not ask the fog to forgive him, because he was no longer sure forgiveness was the right shape for what he had done, only that he would have done it again, and that being willing to do it again, and still grieving the cost of it, was perhaps the most honest place a man who chooses can ever stand.